Hey guys, it's Brooke Maxwell, and I am just getting ready to start this new section on our UDA network called Meet the Maxwells. And I want to clarify first, this is not going to be like a family YouTube station. I don't think our family is fun enough or creative enough or any of that for your entertainment. But anyway, before I get started, I do want to introduce you to my beautiful 16-year-old daughter, Reagan. Want to say hi?
Hi.
Reagan is 16. Well, introduce yourself really quick, Ray.
Hey, I'm Reagan. I'm 16. I go to Riverton High School. I'm a dancer at UDA. I love to sing, theater, all that fun stuff. So, yeah.
All right. So she's my sidekick today. You will get to know some of my family members as we dive into Meet the Maxwells. Anyway, kind of the inspiration that I have behind this part of the network is just to share a different layer of it might be, a different layer of the studio that you have maybe never seen or you never knew, or maybe it is a layer of my job as a studio owner or a layer of my family, and so what goes on in our home, which is sometimes really not so great, but yeah, we'll give you a little glimpse into that. So anyway, I hope my phone is not shaky as I'm driving. It might be, and then that's going to be super annoying until we get to our destination. But anyway, I have Reagan here so I can, I think this is going to be kind of shaky. I don't know. Anyway, hopefully that's not super annoying. But anyway, I'm going to kind of share the story with Reagan, but at the same time share it with you, because I'm not a pro at any of this stuff. And but anyway, today we're gonna talk about the kind of the birth of UDA and the journey of the studio to where we are today. And so before we start, with the birth, that's where we're heading right now in the car. I just want to even go back a little bit before that to give you an idea of where the thought even came from to maybe own, that I wanted to own a dance studio, because it started long before it was open. So anyway, when I was 4 years old, my mom put me in dance at Mrs. K's dance studio, and it was in the basement of her home. And I remember I loved it. I just loved it. I was doing, just like creative ballet, a little bit of tap. And my mom could tell that I really did enjoy dancing. And so it was something that she kept me in. At the same time, my mom, growing up, she had, I wouldn't call it a daycare in the sense that we advertised it as such, but she was a babysitter, and we would have about 8 kids in our home every day that she would take care of. And during the summer months when I was home from school, my mom, I'm sure she needed a break. I can't even imagine. Think of what we're going through right now, you guys, with this quarantine. She had 8 kids at home, and then her kids, which were 4. I mean, we had a lot of kids. And she was amazing, and she did such a fantastic job. This is a totally side note, but I'll share it. I remember, she would have these kids bring a box of cereal during the week, and they would all share, and then they would all take turns bringing a gallon of milk. And at our house, we didn't drink real normal milk. We drank powdered milk. And so I remember we would have cereal with the babysitting kids, and they would have the real jug of milk, and I would want real milk in my cereal. But no, I had to have powdered milk, and it wasn't even in the fridge because we didn't have room, because all of the babysitting kids' milk was in the fridge. So it was usually warm out of a jug or whatever. Okay. Anyway, so but but while in the summer months when my mom would babysit, she would have me take some time with the kids and play school, or I really loved to teach already. So she would have me either teach school, or we would go down in our basement where there was it wasn't finished, and so I would teach roller skating lessons on the cement.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and roller skates were a big thing at that time. And then I remember teaching a little bit of dance, but it was mostly school and roller skating. The funny thing is my mom would say, Brooke, if you go teach school to these kids for 30 minutes, I will give you $1. And then over the summer, I earned all this money. And then she said, well, not all this money, right, maybe $50. And she said, okay, now you should go buy yourself a bedspread. And I did. I bought myself my own bedspread. Oh, anyway, funny memories. Okay, I better keep my eye focused on what we're really talking about here. But anyway, so I found just a big enjoyment in teaching. I remember one summer my mom, she's from Florida, and she went back home for at least 2 weeks. It maybe was even 3. And so we ended up staying with my aunt, my mom's sister, and she lived in Kearns at the time. And I decided while I was living with my Aunt Jane over the summer that I was going to do a dance recital with all of her neighbors and friends, or all of her friends' kids. You guys, I can tell my phone is shaking. Oh my goodness, I better be safe here. So anyway, I used the Sound of Music, and maybe 5 or 6 songs through the Sound of Music. My aunt helped me make skirts out of fabric for all of these kids. There were probably about 15 neighborhood kids that would come over every day, and I taught different routines. We ended up putting on this big recital in the front yard of my aunt's home with lawn chairs and snacks, and it was so awesome. So when my mom came home from Florida, she got to see that. But I remember after that happened, there was like this hook. It was such a passion for me, not only dance, but teaching. And I just knew that I wanted to be a dance teacher. So as far as the dance studio, that didn't come until later. But yeah, the love of teaching came at a young age, not just dancing, but teaching as well. And so anyway, okay, I'm just looking at some notes here. Interestingly enough, now dance is so different than it was back when I started, like almost 40, well, yeah, I kind of started taking it seriously almost 40 years ago. Back then, the advice was that kids should get into serious dance training, ballet and tap, at the age of 8. And so when I was 8 years old, my mom took me out of Mrs. K's basement and brought me to a new studio called the Royal School of Dance. And my teacher, her name was Leanne Schultz, and Heidi Barton danced there with me. And Leanne was a really great teacher. And I started, really focusing on ballet and tap at the time. Jazz, kids didn't really even start jazz until they were maybe in the 5th grade. And those are really the only 3 genres that people were studying, maybe, point in addition to ballet. But I loved ballet so much. I loved it because there were like rules that you had to follow. Like you had to have your arm in a certain way, and your foot had to be pointed, correctly. And there were lines and there were rules, and you could make it perfect. And I loved everything about that. Now my daughter here, she's totally opposite. Totally opposite, right? Well, I'm not that she doesn't love ballet, but it was just, that was kind of my personality at the time. But it still is my personality. But anyway, loved ballet, and I stuck with that. And then when I got into high school, I actually, okay, I'll go back. So my dance studio owner, or Leanne, she ended up moving to Arizona, and I remember that was really, really hard. And I remember that, And so when I have students that are coming from other studios to our studio, that's something I always draw upon and remember that what a hard thing that is, you know, when you've been in a studio and it's time to move to another for whatever reason. And so when Leanne moved, I ended up going to, it was called the Christensen Center in Murray with Mr. C. And that is where, kind of hold on to this and maybe it will stabilize a little bit. Kaylin Oliphant, she danced there, and that's where I met Kaylin. But I was so fortunate to train under Willem F. Christensen for a time. And I think that was kind of between like the ages of 11 and 14 years old, or maybe 12, 15 years old. I was at the Christensen Center. And then I actually decided to go up to the University of Utah in the 9th grade and start in the ballet conservatory program up there. And so in the 9th grade, I started dancing up at the U, and then when I got into high school, I was on the drill team, and then it was about 16 years old, and then I also started teaching for Roland Butler. Now, Roland Butler, any of you adults out there that started, you know, that you danced and you're like my age, you know, getting close to 50. Anyway, Roland, he's like a dance pioneer here in the state, and Roland actually allowed me to teach classes at the age of 16. I started assisting him in the classroom, and then I think he was just kind of old and tired, like, you know, we all get. He's just like, you can go teach the class. You know, I didn't make him pay me, so he was making money for free, and I was getting some amazing experience. I remember teaching the adult ballet class at 16 and just, loved it. So in high school, it was pretty busy time. You know, if you guys have kids who are on drill team or dance company, I'd get to school at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I would dance in the morning, and then I would go up to the U at night and dance for several hours, try to make it over to Roland's studio and teach for a little bit. And honestly, that was the most important stuff in my life. I was not a great student, as my daughter sits here now, and I was really jumping. And you know, I'm always on her for her grades. I would sit in my high school classroom or my classes in high school, and I would be drawing formations for my drill team. I would be creating the schedule of my future dance studio. I would write out the names of the dance studio and see how that looked. And I was just always creating, you know, the future of what that was going to look like, you know, this future dance studio that I was super, super passionate about. And so, yeah, okay, so Reagan, I'm like taking all of the time here, and now I'm trying to concentrate and think, where am I? I'm trying to get to my old home in West Jordan, Utah. Anyway, Ray, if you have like any questions or anything, like, you can hold the phone.
Here, I think if I have any questions. Let's see. So wait, how old were you when you first knew you wanted to like own a dance studio?
So I would say probably around age 7 is when I knew I wanted to be a dance teacher. And then, yeah, that's a good question. And then slowly, slowly throughout the years, when I was about 16, yeah, that is when I was like, I want to own a dance studio. That seemed like the most amazing job in the whole world. And just something else I thought of, Ray, that I'll share real quick, that, you know, I started, so I started teaching at the age of 16, but right after I graduated from high school, I actually started teaching, you know, for other, you know, I'm out of high school, so I guess I can be an official dance teacher, but I started teaching at other dance studios in the Salt Lake Valley, and that was an awesome experience because I taught for some really amazing dance studios, and then some that were not so maybe not so amazing, but in both experiences, with both experiences, I learned a lot. And in fact, a couple of students that I taught, one of my very first students in an outside studio was Tristy Lassig. Johnette McBride, her mom, so Tristy, by the way, she's the conservatory, she's the competitive program financial manager. So started teaching her when she was really little, and then also I was teaching at another studio that Tiffany Sobel was there, and so Tiffany was one of my dance students early on as well. But yeah, it was a cool experience teaching for other studios. And I just have to say, during that time, again, I knew that I wanted to own a studio, so I saved like notes and papers and tons of things that at some point would help me when I had that studio someday. All right, you guys, I'm gonna pull in this little, do you want to show them where we're at, Ray, just with the camera? Like, we're at a church, and I'll explain why we're at a church here in just a moment. So I'm gonna just quickly pull up here, and then like I started sharing a whole bunch of stuff that probably didn't really matter, and so let me just share a little bit more before we jump into this. Oh my gosh, okay, I'll put it up really quick, guys. Oh, and I should say, this is not going to be like a professional video either, because I'm not a video editor. I'll see if Ray can help me a little bit. I don't know what she can really do, but anyway, so once I got into college, I was a ballet major at the University of Utah, majoring in pedagogy, teaching, and just I was always so unique compared to my my friends that I was going to school with, because most of them wanted to be professional dancers, and they loved performing, and they just couldn't wait to to rehearse for the next performance. And all I wanted to do is get my classes done. I love taking class, but get to my own students. And so I would dance all day at the U, and then I would go and teach all night at other studios, like from 4 to 10. And again, I just keep telling you, I just loved it. I loved it so much. And I ended up getting married at about age 22. And then an interesting opportunity came up where I was able to, or there was a dance studio in Sandy that was pretty successful. The studio owner was retiring, and she had contacted me to see if I was interested in buying it and taking it over. And as you can imagine, I was, for so many years, this had been such a, I would say for 20 years, by this time I was probably about 27 years old. I was so just excited to make all of this happen, and I thought, here we go, I can just transition right into this. And so I talked to the owners. We came up with an agreement. We had a lawyer draft all the papers. I remember the night I was driving up there with my husband at that time and my father-in-law, and we drove up and sat down, and they pulled out the papers, and I was so eager. And then all of a sudden, it was just like the most heavy, awful feeling that came over me. And it was basically, I was not supposed to sign those papers. And it was confusing because, again, here, something I had always wanted, but I knew that that's not what I was supposed to do. And so I looked up at the owner and I just said, I am so sorry. I can't even tell you why, but I can't sign these papers. And there was this immediate shift of, even me, I'm like, what am I doing? And after that, it was such a powerful impression and experience. I really was thinking, gosh, maybe this is not what I'm supposed to do. And then shortly after that, my husband and I, well, actually, I have to say at that time, I was trying to get pregnant. I wasn't successful. Yeah, that was what was happening before. And then the studio thing happened and I didn't feel right about that. So in a way I felt totally confused. Like, what is my purpose? You know, what am I supposed to be doing? And at that point I, you know, we just decided that we would focus on trying to get a family here. And that was not, it was not happening. So let me get to the next part of the story. So my grandpa wanted me to go to a family reunion, Grandpa Ted, you know, one Saturday. And for me, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I do not want to go to a family reunion with all of these old people. But I went, and while I was there, I ran into my great uncle, and his name was Uncle Alan, and he was my grandpa's brother. And while I was there, you know, he was just asking how life was and, you know, what I was doing. And I told him, you know, that we wanted to open a dance studio. Told him that whole story. Told him we were looking for a home. And he said, there's a home right next door to us that you should come and take a look at. And immediately I had this recollection of, he lived on this private lane, and there were just 4 homes. And I just thought, because I keep realizing I'm forgetting parts of the story, because when we turned down that studio, I kind of started to think, well, maybe I should just do something small, like in my home. And we were actually looking for homes that might accommodate a studio, but everything we looked at, it wasn't working for many reasons. Mostly because the basement, there wasn't like a large space where kids could dance in. And so, you know, it was just like maybe a small square, and so nothing would work. So when my uncle brought this up, all of a sudden I remembered, like, he lives on this private lane. You know, I wonder, you know, 4 homes, that might kind of work. And so anyway, we ended up going and taking a look at it. I'm in fact, so we're gonna get out of the car right now and yeah, take a look. So is it best, this is how lame, guys, is it best that I like start a new video or just keep it going?
I think you should start a new video.
Start a new video?
Because this is already so long.
Okay. All right, I'll start a new video. All right, guys. Is it started, Reagan?
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys. So so I told you about, I was at a family reunion and my great uncle told me about this house that was for sale, which was right next door to his home. And so we're gonna go kind of take a look at that. But I remembered that it was on this private lane. So anyway, when we got here, I didn't remember this, but I just want to show you. So if you look, like we're in an LDS church parking lot, and then what I didn't realize is, oh my gosh, we can have everybody park here in this parking lot, and then there's a gate that leads right to these 4 homes back here. And so you know, we figured this out when we came. But anyway, so I'm just gonna take you back here and show you. These are our neighbors. They're probably wondering what's going on.
I wonder if they even remember
Here's
us.
Here's the private lane. And so I'm telling you what, okay. Anyway, this, instead of having people, you know, drive down here, we ended up having them park here. Let me just make sure my neighbor doesn't come. He's not my neighbor anymore. But you know what, I'm gonna go say hi to him, so just a second.
Do you want me to record it?
Is that President?
Okay, we're on.
Okay, you guys, this is like an hour and a half later. I said hi to my neighbor. We went inside and visited. It was a nice little break. Okay, let's continue on. So anyway, why don't you, hi. So what ended up happening is the you know, everybody would park in the church parking lot and all the kids would walk down this little lane. And this is our old house, right? You can just, oh, you know what? Keep it there. I'm gonna pull it up to, oh, we don't want the ringer on, right?
No.
Okay. All right. So this is where the studio was. And yeah, just so crazy. There's 2 cute elderly people who live here now, And so when we got here, you know, just to look at the house, we went inside and in the front door and looked at the house. At first, you know, I wasn't trying to be too eager I was thinking about this for a dance studio. So we liked the upstairs, and then we went down the stairs, and when we got down there, I looked over to the right, and the entire half of the basement was this open. The basement was finished. It was this open space, and then, you know, on the other side it had a family room and a laundry room and a bathroom and a guest room. But that open space, it was perfect for a dance studio. And so, you know, we were excited. We just told them we liked it. We didn't want to leak out that we were going to bring some business back in this private area. So we went home and we thought about it for a week, and we prayed about it, and by the end of the week we just really felt like this is what we were supposed to do. So I have to ask my daughter, is it better this way? Like, can you see me, or am I too much in the sun? We are so amateur. We're so amateur, you guys. Is this a better place?
Yeah.
Right here? Okay. All right. So yeah, we ended up deciding that we were going to get it. We moved in shortly after, and our plan, and that, trying to think of what year that must have been. That was probably 1999 is when we moved in, because 2001 is when we started the studio, and we needed to, you know, get in here and have a year. So, okay, I better pick this up, you guys. This could be a super long video. Nobody's going to want to watch it. So anyway, once we decided to do the studio, then I took out a loan, and that was fun to be able to take out a loan and buy, like, you know, your sound system and pick the perfect floors. I remember going to the craft store and getting like stamps for the preschool kids, and you know, you're just starting, you know, your business, and there's so many different parts of it. And then I remember my one thing that I knew was, if we were going, you know, if I was going to start this studio in the basement, that I needed to make sure that my marketing materials were really professional. And during that time, it wasn't email, you know, people weren't sending emails. It was like brochures that you would put a stamp on and you'd send it in the mail. And so I worked with a photographer. We made I mean, they were so beautiful. The brochures were so beautiful. And so anyway, that summer we got about 8,000 flyers copied off. And my mom and I went to grocery stores, and we put the flyers in behind the windshields in cars. We went to tons of neighborhoods. I mean, that whole summer I just felt like we walked neighborhoods, and we put the flyers on the doorstep, or on their doors. People got mad. People would call and say you use tape, so then we tried to use elastics. I remember hiring little kids to go do it, but that was our way. You know, we were very organic in our marketing. And at the end of the summer, we had 85 students. And to me, that was a lot. Super excited. And so anyway, oh my gosh, you guys, I think about, at that time, it was such an exciting time. And it's nice to go back, you know, in times like this. But anyway, what's really interesting, I feel like I need to like change over here so you have a different location to make this video more interesting. But you know, when you open a business, can you still see as good here, Ray? Or is it not as good? Okay. When you open a business and you've never done it before, you don't know the proper steps. Like, I'm still learning to this day. And so when we opened it, I didn't really think about my business license or, you know, getting my home approved by the city. I just started making plans with my beautiful brochure. And then it was probably about 3 weeks before I was like, okay, I better get my business license. And so at that moment, you know, I called, anyway, tried to register our name, the name that I had picked at the time. Someone already had that name registered. But the city told me that I had to have someone like the fire department come and check out the home. And, you know, everything had just gone so smooth. So I wasn't worried. Anyway, this woman comes. She comes through our front door. We take her downstairs. She looks at the space and she said, "Do you have an outside entrance?" And I told her that we didn't. And she said, there is no way that you're opening the studio in a few weeks unless you can create an outside entrance. It's a fire hazard. And, you know, we had our we were ready to roll except for this business license. And I just like this pit in my stomach thinking, that can't be true. Everything's just been so perfect. And so we started walking around with this woman in our basement trying to find, well, where could we do an outside entrance? You know, how quickly could we do it? Anyway, we did that. We walked up to the top of the stairs and she stood there and she saw our back door to the backyard, and then to the left she saw our garage door. And so at the top of the stairs there were two doors, and she said, okay, hold on a second, both of these doors go out, right? And I said yes. And she's like, you're gonna be okay. And I remember just thinking, oh, just perfect. So anyway, I'm just gonna kind of, Reagan, if you want to go back here. So the way that it would work is this garage would be open, the kids would come through, they would come inside where in our kitchen where we would be eating dinner, and then they would go down the stairs. And so I'm just going to oh, before I share this up, I have to say this. The week before we opened our doors, I shouldn't say we, it was just me. I was doing everything, teaching all the classes, you know, doing the book work, doing the cleaning, ordering the costumes. I was doing everything. A week before, I cleaned that Marley floor, and I got down on my hands and knees and I scrubbed it with a sponge, not to ruin it, but make it really clean. The day before classes, I had to go and clean that Marley floor again, just because I wanted it spotless. The morning of, I had to do the Marley floor one more time before the dancers came. And I wish I had a video of that day, because it was the morning of, and I was in that studio and I was dancing around, I was crying. I mean, it was, I don't know, it was quite probably the scene. I was just so excited. So anyway, first year, like I said, I did everything, and then slowly we started adding more teachers. Some of I wrote down just so I wouldn't forget. Oh, let's see. Some of our first teachers. Oh my goodness, you guys, I just have so many notes. Too much to share. But Heidi Barton was, I think, our very first teacher. Jennifer Tripp came in shortly after that. Cicely Oldham started teaching in our basement. Jen Zombos was here for a short time. And so almost 20 years ago, you guys, 19 years ago, they started teaching here. And then what's so amazing is some of our students even, that are teachers now, they were students at the time. So if any of you take from Anne Marie Browning, she was 3-4 years old when I started. Same with Ashlyn McBride. Rochelle Snow and Haley Israelson, they were like in 5th grade when they started here, which, you know, was pretty awesome. So it's starting to rain, but I'm going to share a couple more things and we'll get back in the car. We were here until we got to about 200 students. And before it, you know, from year 1 to year 4, most of it I just loved. Well, we can keep walking and I'll tell you, you've seen it. So, you know, for those first 3 years, it was just like, I felt like I was on a vacation every day, in the office all day, doing the business and then teaching all night. I'm looking at my daughter's face. She's probably like, yeah, nothing's changed. I'm just in the office now all day. But it was awesome.
Or 3 days straight.
And, but what happened is, so downstairs, there was a family room. And that family room soon became the waiting room where families would come and they would bring their kids. And then in our neighborhood, when they didn't have anyone to play with, they knew that they could come to my house because kids were always there waiting in my living room. So we started to have an excess of people just hanging out in our family room downstairs. Then our laundry room, which was the waiting room, it just became, you know, we put cubbies in there, but like snacks and food, you know, we're always in our laundry room. But then we just started like doing kids' laundry. They would have, you know, they would get intermixed with our laundry. And then I remember our waiting room area for, not our waiting room, our spare bedroom. Those of you who did dance at the studio, Rochelle and Haley, some of you will remember that that's where I stored all of the recital costumes. And so it really wasn't so much of a spare bedroom, but teenage kids would go hang out in there. And one day I was up in my bathroom getting ready for classes, and I could hear kids talking. And, you know, I got down on my hands and knees and listened a little more carefully, and I started to realize that that was a place that they were all telling their secrets. Needed to put a stop to that, but yeah, basically our house was starting to just, it was overtaken. And again, because we had no outside entrance, we had people walking through. All right, let's jump in the car and I'll continue on this story. Okay, all right. I am just thinking this video is
So long.
It is, it's long, just like my emails, you guys. Okay, so anyway, I think the thing that really made us realize that it was time to leave that home was, you know, we continued, my husband at the time, we continued to want to have a family, and we had been married then for probably, yeah, almost 10 years, and it just was not working out for us. And so we decided to adopt, and that is an incredible, amazing story in itself. My daughter, who's with me, Reagan, she was our beautiful daughter that came into our home and came into our family. But at that time, you know, I had now waited to have a child for, you know, 7, 8 years at that point. And so we finally were notified that we were selected to be parents. And I've got this dance studio going on in the home. And I remember bringing Reagan home from the hospital, and you know, you want that to be just such a beautiful, sacred, quiet time with your new baby. And so I kind of quarantined myself to a bedroom in our home, and had everything there. And, you know, but at night, the music was so loud, you could always feel the music upstairs. And we had, at that time, you know, teachers, I had subs lined up. I planned to take a 6-week break, just like most people do when they have a baby. And it was hard. You know, parents were coming into the house, and they would, you know, walk over to the hall and be like, Brooke, I want to see your brand new baby. And, people were coming back, and it was just like there was no privacy at all. And so at that time, we decided it was time to take the studio out of the house. And you know, just thinking about that, I've got my 16-year-old beautiful daughter here. She's never had peace and quiet from the moment she came home. Darn it, it's always been a part of her life. So we'll ask her some questions here in a minute. So anyway, we found a location outside of our home, which we're going to head to really quick right now. Oh, okay. What did she say?
Yeah, she'll be filming on the
Okay, I'll talk to you about that in a minute. I'm trying to take care of emails and texts and things coming in as we go. So we decided to move out into a new location. We would double our space, go from one studio inside in our home to 2 spaces. And actually my neighbor, the one I just got done talking to, he had his business over in the same location. He was probably tired of all the kids, and they probably enjoyed it, actually, just, you know, watching all those kids come by. But after a while, it wasn't so much of a private lane anymore. So he told me about this space, and we ended up moving over here. I'm in West Jordan, just about 5 minutes away. I'm pulling in now, and we doubled our space. And while we're pulling in here, just a couple more memories. I remember our first recital that we did in the basement. It was during the time of the Olympics. And was it 2002 Olympics? Is that what it was? Must have been.
Well, we started in 2001.
Right, but recital came 2002. So it was during that time, and our recital theme was Light Up the Land. And we did different countries. We did it at West Jordan Middle School. I go back to that memory, and I just remember I was so stressed out. I remember I screamed at a group of kids, and I just didn't know how to handle myself very appropriately at that time. So anyway, okay, you guys, let me pause it or stop it for just a minute and we'll get out. You guys, so here we are. I'm just going to try to give you an idea of where we are. So there's Jim's Family Restaurant on Redwood Road, about maybe 70th South, and then over here, right in where these two signs are, Dance Image Academy. This is the two, there's the entrance, as you can see, and we created two studios, one on each side. And so we came into this space our first year, and we were able to, at that time there was a studio actually that had closed, and we brought in just a ton of new students. And so immediately our studio was now full, and we needed more space again. And there was over here, none of this was open. And so we ended up actually going back in our home for the second year, and we were running from both locations. And so we had students that, they would have tap and ballet here, and then they would go over to the home to do their class at night. And that was awful, I'm sure, for everybody at UDA. Maybe, I won't even go there. That's good. Anyway. So then the third year, so first year we were here, second year we were in both the home and here, and the third year we actually...
Wait, wasn't the first year you were at your house?
I'm talking about just the first year here. And so, Ray, if you can kind of get the very end, as you guys can see, there are like 4, follow my finger, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? We took the 2, we came back and we took the far one on the right. That became open. So we did not have to be back in our home any longer, but kids, they were running back and forth from these 2 to that one. And we were able to stay here for a couple more years after that. So we were here for 4 years total. And, a lot of cool things happened while we were here. This is where we started our competitive programs, our competitive program. We only had one. At the time, I was probably the one who was more over it. And Cicely came in Cicely Oldham. She's our conservatory director now. But anyway, I just remember, I'll share this experience. We were growing really fast, and I was learning a lot. We had an opportunity to bring a choreographer in by the name of Stacy Tukey. Those of you who watch So You Think You Can Dance, do they still have that show anymore? I don't know. I never watched TV. I think they do, but she's been a choreographer on that, but she's amazing. She did not have such a big name at the time when we brought her in, and I remember I had her stay with one of our dancers in her home. But anyway, Stacy choreographed this amazing piece, and I costumed it, and it was the most awful costume ever. I loved earth tones, and I just remember I put it like in this yellow top, green skirt, and after that, Cicely fired me, and she took over the competitive program, which was just fine. And then from that point forward, it continued to grow. So we oftentimes would go over to Jim's Family Restaurant over here. Actually, it did not look this way at first. I think when we were at the studio for, I think it was the last year, I was coming back off of Redwood Road, or coming home on Redwood Road, and there was a big fire in this area, and my heart, I just thought the studio must be on fire because it was right here. But when we got here, it was Jim's family restaurant, and they rebuilt it up. But we would always go over there, the dancers and I, and we would go and get pancakes and scones, and that was super fun. But probably what I would say, lastly, this is where, when we got here, I ended up getting an office manager, and our first office manager was Rebecca Mickelson. And Rebecca was just amazing. She was one of our dancers' moms, but she really helped me learn a lot of good business practices. I was just a young, creative artist, I guess, didn't have a business sense, and I learned a lot from Rebecca. She kept, our rules really tight and our systems really tight, and so I'm still so appreciative of her. Let me just see if there's anything else, and then we'll get back in the car and head over to South Jordan. So yeah, we were here for 4 years, and then the recession hit, which is kind of where we're going to be again. And it's interesting how in a time when things were really hard, I had a man reach out to me who was a landlord in South Jordan, and he said, hey, I just have this space. He's like, I want you guys to move into it. He said, I'm willing to build it all out for you if you'll come. And of course I'm like, yeah, we will come. And so it was 2007, 2008 that we ended up leaving here and moving to the South Jordan studio, where it is now. Although we were only taking a portion of that building, but I'll show you when we get there. Okay, we'll get back in the car. All right, you guys, we're back in the car. Going out on Redwood Road and heading towards the current South Jordan space. So interestingly enough, during that time that we were at that studio, right up until the very end, well, towards that last year, I actually ended up going through a divorce, and we held our registration for the following year at the West Jordan location in that third little area, the little isolated island over there on the corner. And I remember we were in there, and I invited some moms that I was just really impressed with at the studio. One of them was Jeanette Peacock, and Jeanette currently, she's still with us. She's working in the preschool as one of the assistant teachers, and she's also over the costumes for UDA recital. But I didn't know Jen super well, but she had been a mom at even our home dance studio, or the studio when it was in our home. And I just called her up and I said, hey, would you be willing to come and work registration? You can work for some trade. And she said, sure, I'll come. And so she came, and I remember it was like a dead space, like no one was there registering. And so I was just talking to these moms, and I asked all of them, I said, hey, does anybody know like a really good guy that they could set me up with? And well, I did. Yeah, my daughter wants to make sure that I preface I had gone through a divorce, so this was after the divorce that this happened. So anyway, Jen Peacock's face just lit up, and she's like, I know someone. And so anyway, this man, it's my husband now, he coached one of her daughter's soccer team, and then I taught her daughter Whitney dance, and so that's the connection. So she's telling me about this guy, Jason. She's telling me he's really great, and that he has 3 daughters, and that she'll hook us up so we could start talking. So we ended up talking, and and things were really great. We had great conversation. So I just need to point out again, this was in August, right before we moved into the new studio. And kept talking. We kind of went on 2 dates. And by the end of October, we were engaged. You know what? I'm wondering if we were still actually at this studio for 1 more year. You guys, I can't seem to remember, but anyway. Okay, I'm remembering now. I think. Oh my gosh. I think this was on the this was the summer before our last year, is what I think, at the studio. It was. Yes, it was. So I'm gonna go back. This is, yeah, so I went through a divorce our 3rd year at this West Jordan space. That summer, right before our last year, we held registration. There was Jen Peacock. She introduces me to Jason. In August, we end up getting engaged the end of October, and we end up getting married in mid-December, December 15th. And then we are married for a month, and then I find out that I'm pregnant. And I was so excited. And anyway, by the time we had our recital that year, I was about ready to give birth. We ended up moving the dance studio to South Jordan. During that time, ended up having Eden, who is now 9 years old. And so in 1 year, I just have to say, it was really hard. I don't know if that 1 year was as hard as what we're going through right now, because this has been really hard. This whole situation with Corona and the business. But in 1 year, I got a divorce, and I met someone very quickly, got remarried, gained 3 new daughters, got pregnant, had a baby, and moved the business to South Jordan. And I remember I cut my hair really short and I dyed it red, and I came home one day with my hair short. It was you, Reagan, right?
It was me, yeah. Okay, no, okay, I'm gonna tell this.
Okay.
Okay, I actually remember this day very, very, like, perfect. I was in my mom's room, because for a year or whatever, it was just me and my mom living together. So I would, like, sleep, like, with her or whatever, because I didn't like being in my own room. So I was just, like, chilling in her room, and she walks in. She has, like, short red, kind of, like, dark brownish streaks, like, in her hair. I had no clue who she was. I just, like, started crying, because I had no clue who this woman was that just walked into my home, because she looked nothing like herself at all, because she's always been blonde and will forever stay blonde. But yeah, it was, yeah.
Well, and that's her memory, but she just kind of let out this wail, like a scream cry, because it was a pretty stark difference. But that was a rough year, and not just rough, you know, it was rough for everyone. I know that Reagan, that was rough for her too. You know, I had always wanted a big family, and I had all of these dreams and ideas that all of a sudden, you know, I have these 3 new daughters, and I'm bringing Reagan, and then there's a brand new baby coming, and it just, those of you who've been through this experience, it is not like that. It was rough for many years, but but now they're older and things are much better. You know, it's now been almost 10 years, and so it's better. So anyway, but we moved over here to the South Jordan studio. I'm kind of, you guys, this event, you know, in my mind I was picturing this video that it was going to end up being kind of semi-professional. This is so rough, it's sad. I don't know if anybody's going to sustain through it, so, but we're trying to hurry. You know, I left to do this, my babysitter's there, I run into my neighbor, you know, start taking a little vacation out of the office, and my sitter needs to get home. So, all right. tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pull over across the street. Oh, that was not a good idea. That was so not a good idea. Okay, we just actually passed the South Jordan studio. Maybe we won't even go in it. Darn it.
Let's just come back and do this tonight.
No, we can't come back and do this tonight.
Why?
Because we can't. Okay, I'm making a quick U-turn. And I'm turning around.
Side note, my mom's a scary driver.
But I have my hands on the wheel, and I am being safe.
She is.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull in really quick to our South Jordan space just to show you one thing. So we moved into this space, and I just have to tell you, you know, like I said, it was right after the recession, or we were kind of in it, and so this landlord was willing to build it out. And so we did get to design it to some degree, and 4 studios were going in it because it wasn't what it is today. We didn't have all of the space, and I have to tell you, I felt like I was living or creating this mansion. I mean, think of, again, you know, our basement studio, and then all of a sudden we just get this big, nice, beautiful space with 4 studios. So, all right, just a moment. All right, so over right here where we've got our sign, this is what we moved into. Well, it actually included all of this tan part, but this corner area right over here, this was actually Enterprise Rent-A-Car, or is it called Rent-A-Car? Anyway, that was that space over there, and it was like that for probably 4 years. And you know, we wanted more space here. We needed more space, and the landlord kept saying, you know, you'll be able to take that, and that never happened until after we ended up doing our Draper location. And then that ended up opening up. So as of right now, yes, we've taken that space and we've created a couple of small studios in that area. So now, you know, we're here. But anyway, remember that area wasn't there. We were here for about 4 years, and at that time, our competitive program was dancing within our technical program, meaning all of their technique classes were together. But we were trying to build programs, and so we built our STARS program here. We first of all called it PEEPS. Can't remember what that, I think it was Performance Education. It was an acronym. I don't remember what it stood for. But we had our PEEPS program, and Jennifer Tripp and Heidi Barton were over that until Jennifer stepped out and started helping with recital. And they changed the name to the STARS program, and now Leslie's in there. We started our ballet ensemble program here, which Kaylin Oliphant was the director of that. And then after, you know, 4 years, Kaylin was ready to focus on her family, her beautiful daughters. And at that point, we turned ballet ensemble into EPG, which London Brooksby is over now. And anyway, this is, I would say, you know, when we moved into West Jordan, our business operations got better, and then when we moved in here, this is when we really started expanding our programs. And so I think our first recital at Kingsbury Hall was actually at the West Jordan studio. We continued our recitals at Kingsbury Hall here, and then we'll just get in the car and I'll continue from there. All right, you guys, we're now driving over to the Draper space. So those of you who are currently dancing at the South Jordan studio and you've never been to the Draper location, I want you to time me right now of how long it takes me to get there, because it's usually like 10 minutes. Even though it's in Draper, it seems like that's so far away, but it's actually not too far, because it is on the I'm getting my directions, west side of the freeway, right by Airborne, but we're gonna head there right now. It was interesting because while I was here at South Jordan, and we had started we only had one competitive program. It was just called Company at the time. Thank you, Ray. I got to meet Shireen Winkle, who was one of the parents of our dancers, Becca Winkle. And just so you know, Shireen Winkle now is the director over UDA's Creative Arts Preschool. And I remember we were sitting in Studio B for a meeting or something, and I just started talking to her, and she was just so darling and cute, and she had an accent because she was living in South Carolina. And we talked, and I asked her, I think they had probably moved recently, or in the past year, to Utah. And she just told me that she had a preschool, and I was really curious about that, because that was always something that I had thought about in the back of my mind as a growth strategy. Not so much because I really wanted to own a preschool, but obviously as a business who we operate mostly during evening hours, when you want to occupy your space throughout the day, you start thinking of other ways to bring in revenue. And so anyway, I brought that up to her, that I had always thought about opening a preschool, and she said, when the time comes, come and talk to me. So that was my first meeting with her. And then we got, you guys, my years are not super clear in my mind, but I think it was 2014 is when we, again, we were growing. We still had not gone into that enterprise space, and we needed to move. And I was always about just meeting the demand as opposed to let's just sit on it and just, it's okay. It was like, no, we need to move. And so we built our schedule to move before we ever had a space, which was not very smart. And I remember as time was going on, we weren't finding anything, and that was probably, next to this, that was the hardest year of business, was right before we moved into Draper. Anyway, we ended up coming up with this plan that we were going to go into this Draper facility, and I reached out to Shireen Winkle, and part of the growth strategy was to open the preschool. I can't remember exactly. I should have clarified this obviously before doing this video, but for whatever, we were having a hard time finding the space. We finally found the Draper location, which really was perfect because it was an old gym, and so there, bathrooms were already set up. That front area where the counter, it was already set up. And but when we found it, we felt really good about that. We ended up going into Draper with the strategy of taking all of our competitive program dancers. At that time, it was only company. There was only one program, and put them in the Draper facility. And I don't remember, you guys, exactly what happened, but the preschool could not be a part of it that first year. It wasn't Shireen. I remember Shireen was gung-ho. She was ready, but I think it was me that I didn't feel quite ready for. I can't believe I didn't get this information before I started this video. Anyway, so we moved in, and we were in Draper and in South Jordan, and that year we brought all of our comp kids, and we started a second tiered program, and that was varsity. And so Crystalline Lieb was the first director of varsity, and she was so awesome. She started that program and grew that program for 4 years. And we had Cicely. We changed company to conservatory, and so we had 2 competitive programs that were now at the Draper studio. No preschool yet. This was the first year, but the following year we opened the Creative Arts Preschool. And I'll have to tell you, you guys, all of those people in charge of those programs are so amazing. Like I said, Crystalline grew that varsity program, and Cicely continued to grow conservatory. And then Shireen Winkle stepped in and started this preschool. Now, I have to tell you, I knew she was amazing just from talking to her. But when she stepped in and she started creating this preschool, it was completely overwhelming to me because I just kept seeing all that she was producing. My daughter was in the preschool, and all of the art projects that were coming home, and the communication, and the performances, the plays, and the little musicals, and everything that they were doing. And I would come, and they would be cooking, and they were outside, or they were in the studio with a big tub of shaving cream to do sensory time, and it was just amazing. And the preschool grew, and in 3 years, I think it was named the best preschool in Draper, and it's had that title for the past 3 years. And it's just fabulous. I'll tell you what, it is what keeps me on my toes working on the UDA side of things, because I've got to make sure that our dance studio is just as amazing as that preschool. So Schringwinkle is amazing, and I have to tell you, if you have not checked out that preschool, you need to. All right, you guys, actually, let's see, Ray, step out here for a minute, just so you can see the front. I don't know how many of you have, probably a lot of you have never been to this location, but here it is on the outside. Over here, let's walk over here really quick. We've got our little play area during the day. There's this beautiful music maker in the corner that Shireen just had made. And then over in this, that tree is just beautiful, all those blossoms. We have a swing that's right now tucked into the tree. The kids swing on that. But this is where they come outside during preschool. Got our bird feeders, and a little sensory bin over here with tractors in. I think we put sand in that. All right, we're gonna go into the studio. I know that there's a few teachers right now teaching online classes. Okay, you can hear them teaching. Anyway, I'll just grab this for a second, if that's okay, Reagan. I'm just gonna do a little. You can see we've got preschool boards, and then there's a class going on over there. We've got some of our same posters from the South Jordan space. And those of you who dance here at Draper, I should have gone into the South Jordan location. Anyway, yep, here's our area here. This is our kitchen. Our preschool does a lot of cooking in here, thanks to Vicki Arnay, our preschool manager. She's such an amazing cook. And then we go down here, and there are 2 studios down this hallway right here, and we'll just kind of peek in. We've got our online class going right there. Miss Gabby is doing her stretch class. And then over here, we've got Tiffany Sobel teaching probably some jazz technique classes. All of our competitive dancers on the wall, their photos. Oh, no, and these cute poster boards. There's like the conservatory teams, our conservatory program. Right here, this is for competition. Oh my gosh, this makes my heart hurt. Good luck. Dance your heart out at competition. I think
Isn't it usually that conservatory does varsities and varsities could do conservatories?
Yes. Yeah, usually we let them decorate the boards. But I think conservatory had 2 competitions this year. Varsity only has had 1 so far. And then we'll just go down here. We've got our teacher's lounge and our women's and men's bathroom. Our offices in the back. And then, and then in the very back of the studio is where we have all of our preschool stuff. So, our preschool here, we literally roll out the equipment every single day. And and then hold our preschool. So it's very labor intensive for all of those that work here because they have to take it out and put it away. All right, so we'll step out and we'll lock this up. So really quick, you know, where we are today, you know, we started out just in that little house in West Jordan, and today we are the largest dance studio in the Salt Lake Valley. This year, I haven't really counted. I know we have at least 57 teachers, and that's not including our preschool teachers, and probably about 20 administrative staff. And it's amazing, you know, we're going into our 20th year next year. And I thought we'd be going into it a little differently than we are. In fact, let's just jump in the car. I'm going to share one more thing with you. All right, you guys, so now we're leaving the Draper studio. It's crazy how quiet it is right now walking into those studios and just having teachers in the spaces by themselves. Yeah, I want to share really quick. About 2 weeks, well, let me go back. So our South Jordan studio, okay, let's just clarify, both studios. And for those of you who have stayed with me until the end, we now call our South Jordan studio the technical program. That's where all of our technical dancers as well as our performance dancers are. And then our competitive program dancers are at the Draper facility, as well as our creative arts preschool. And at the end of every year, we do surveys for our parents in all of our programs and at both studios. You know, it's important to us that we know what you parents are thinking and what you feel is working and not working. And every year, on our surveys, at least for the past when I say past 2 or 3 years, the biggest complaint has been that South Jordan studio is so, the hallways are so small, and that lobby area, there's just no room. And so some of you might think, yeah, and they never listen, they don't do anything about it, but we have been trying. So I have to tell you, the past 2 years, we have been actually looking at different, trying to find maybe a place for the studio to go. And you know, I had a lot of big dreams. There was that Black Door gym that they went bankrupt, and now they just made it into an anxiety center. But I had my eye on that for a little bit. I just let myself dream. But anyway, we've continued to look for a space, and then this past year we actually did find a space that we were really excited about. It was quite large, right more in the Riverton area, about 15,000 square feet. And knowing that this year we are going into our 20th year in September, had a lot of exciting things on deck. One of which was hoping to move into this new space. I kept telling the teachers on their weekly videos that I had something exciting to share, and behind the scenes I was, working with our realtor and, trying to talk the landlord down. This space had been sitting vacant for 3 years, and so we were really trying to, get in there. On the only way we could would be to get a really good deal. But anyway, we finally talked it down to a good rate, but then we were trying to get some tenant improvement funds to build out the space, and that was not working as smoothly as we had hoped. And so what's interesting is probably the 1st of March, I needed answers. I needed to know what we were doing, because the plan was to get into, get our internet set up for summer and for fall, and I didn't have any answers. And so I actually stopped it. I just said, you know, things are moving too slow. We're not going to be moving forward at this time. And the coronavirus was something, obviously, was going on heavily in China and Italy, and we heard, you know, that it was now in the States, but it really wasn't a scare yet at that time. So anyway, we did put we decided not to move forward due to things moving too slow, and I am so incredibly grateful that happened. We would have not been in a situation where we probably, you know, if that loan was in place, that we would have survived. And so I count my blessings every day when things get really hard right now, that at least we are in a space where we're hoping we maintain. And anyway, I look back, you guys, and it's just really interesting how quickly time goes by. It was 20 years ago in that basement, and I was teaching all of those classes, and when we finally moved to the South Jordan space, it got to a point where I had to pick, you know. Well, I really didn't have a choice. Like, I decided to open a studio, so I had to kind of run it. And I had to step out of the classroom, and that was really, really hard for me. We were in a meeting, like a administrative meeting. I remember I was in Studio C in the South Jordan space, and I had our team in there, and I just let them know that I had to, you know, hang up the towel for teaching, and I was super emotional. It was kind of like a death, you know. You open, I don't know if any of you have ever read the E-Myth. It's about, you know, the baker who wants to open a bakery, and they open this bakery, but then they have to bake all the pies, and they, you know, all, but bottom line is, like, you open a business because you have a passion, but then really what you have a passion about you no longer do, because you've got to run the business. So that's kind of that was a difficult transition, but I actually enjoy where I'm sitting now. I love having new teachers come in and to help facilitate their growth, and to watch them learn and grow and become better teachers. Sorry about that, guys. A phone call was coming in. So anyway, I just appreciate you guys. It's been a journey, and now we're entering into a new journey that happened very quickly, but we will be strong. We're going to get through it. And anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed this little, turning back into my neighborhood. We've just made a little circle around the valley here. And hope you were able to learn a few things about UDA. I would have loved to have gone into that West Jordan home and gone downstairs to show you, but, you know, that elderly couple lived there, and that's certainly not appropriate. I shouldn't have even gone and talked to my neighbor in that, you know, we're supposed to be staying far away from each other. But anyway, all right, you guys, so that is the birth and journey, and we will be continuing on that journey this fall. Next week, I think I'm either I'm probably going to introduce you to my family next week. Each member of our family, and yeah, that's probably what will happen. But anyway, thanks guys I hope you learned something. Hope it was worth it. Make sure you get on our UDA network and look at all of the activities that are taking place during the week. That is on the social distancing, like, you know, distancing calendar tonight, which you'll be seeing this tomorrow. But my husband Jason, he is an amazing storyteller, and he just makes them up as he goes along. He'll be sharing some stories tonight, and I just hope that, you know, you can get a little glimpse into our family, and that through all of this I'll get to know some of you parents better. And since we can't be in the studio, we can really focus on connecting in other ways. So, okay, Reagan, you want to say goodbye?
Bye.
Thanks for being my sidekick today.
Yeah, of course, I got you.
All right, we're home. Have a great night, guys, or have a great day. See ya.